This is Jeremiah Riggins from Sanctuary Family Farms. I'm married to Katie Riggins, and we have two boys, Ben and Sam, who are 10 and 13 years old.
For my thoughts are not your thoughts, neither are your ways my ways, saith the Lord. Isaiah 55:8. Here's an idea we've been talking a lot about in church lately. Anything that winds up your emotions, like frustration, jealousy, feeling hopeless, or spitefulness, is directly related to your need for control and a desire to protect your ego. If someone says something you don't like and you get angry, hurt, or bitter, that's about you. If you look into the future and start to worry about how things are going to turn out, that is about you and not God. Over the last 4 years, I've had some major life changes. Changes in jobs, kids changing schools, a house renovation, and so on. Some of these I've handled well, and some I haven't handled so well. So what was different in what I handled well and what I didn't handle so well? The difference was whether I saw the situation as something I had to fix or solve, or something I was going to give God the credit for. If my house floods, I have the choice to look into the future and get upset about it, or I can believe that God has purpose in this situation. In Romans 8:31 it says, "What shall we then say to these things? If God be for us, who can be against us?" So in the end, it really boils down to something very simple. Do you believe that God is in all things, that God controls all things, that God cares for you? If this is true, then nothing goes beyond His plan. When we are not walking in His joy because of the circumstances around us, then we do not believe that He is in control and that He cares for us. In Psalms 139, 8 through 10, it says, "If I ascend up into heaven, thou art there. If I make my bed in hell, behold, thou art there. If I take with the wings of the morning, and dwell in the uttermost parts of the sea, even there shall thy hand lead me, and thy right hand shall hold me." So here's the challenge. Next time you found yourself in a difficult situation, are you going to turn to God and His love and plan in His plan, or to your control? If you turn to His plan, you can be filled with love, joy, and peace. If you turn to your control, you can only be filled with anxiety, fear, jealousy, and emotions. Hope you have a great week.
Hey, Bear, I really like the blog. Short and impactful.
Thanks, Paul.
But let me ask you a question. Here's the dilemma. I see a lot of times people, as a last resort, pray.
Mm-hmm.
When all else fails, pray. You know, it's like have you ever seen the boxes used to the fire handles? You know, where you pull a handle.
Yeah.
Fire used to be an axe inside of a glass box. You break the box and get the axe out. It seems like we should put prayer inside of one of those and go, in emergencies when everything else fails, break the box, bend down and pray. And from what you said, that probably would benefit us if that was our first response, not our last response.
Yeah, I completely agree with that. I think it's break in case of emergency is what they said on the glass, something like that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it absolutely would.
Wait, unless you're a senator. Then you can,
then you can pull it when you want.
You can pull it when you want.
Break in case you don't want to vote.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, so maybe a question is what causes us not to stop to pray? And I think we are, for the first time probably, not ever in history, but in modern times, we have a tendency to be a me generation. Me, right? So, and even with kids, we ask them, what do you want to be when you grow up? What do you want to do? What are you good at? What are you not good at? What are you this? What are you that? What are you that? But I have rarely ever heard anybody ask a kid, what do you need to do for your family? Or even stop to say, like, hey, you're going to get a job. What job do you think would be best for raising kids if you want to raise kids, or best for raising a family, or for whatever else? It's always goes back to what really gets you going. What are you going to get accolades for? What are you going to get recognized for? What are you going to get for this? What are you going to get for that? And so I think our whole world winds up being wrapped around our ego, and what makes us look important or feel important. And as long as we're the ones that are important and we're the center of attention, Christ can never be the center of attention. So I can't remember where in the Bible it says God's a jealous God. that includes your own ego and yourself. He doesn't share the throne with anybody else.
Absolutely true, Bear. I think, what you're saying makes me think of the fact of if I solve my own problems and I am my own God.
Mm-hmm.
And, I have a good friend who always uses the expression, how does that work for you?
Mm-hmm.
And I would think after a while, I guess not, we would be smart enough to go, duh, that doesn't work at all.
Mm-hmm.
What's the definition of doing the same thing over and over again, expecting different results?
Mm-hmm.
So, how do we break that? Have you got a way of thought about how we break that?
I mean, I think there's a couple of ways. One is the Catholic way, right? So, and I have maybe a little tinge of Catholic in me. I like routine, so I think one way to do it, one starter, and I don't think this is the end all be all, is you start with routine. So when we meet in the morning to get on tractors, unless everybody's running in opposite directions, we stop and pray before we climb on the tractors. We've kind of made it a habit of, if you're the boss for the day, you stop everybody and you pray before you start. And I think that helps to reset your mind that it isn't our field, it's his field. It isn't my job, it's his job. It isn't my solutions, it's his solutions. It's not about whether the cotton comes up or the cows get put in the pen. It's about do we give, as Lee's blog said before, do we live a life of worship through the day, or is it just me? Am I worshiping me? Am I worshiping God? So I think one is habit. You just have to make yourself do it, even when you don't feel comfortable doing it. You just do it. So I think starting every day with prayer is a good place to start. I think meals are fine, but meals become rote and monotonous, and honestly, most of us just do it so we don't get poisoned by our cooking.
You mean pray before the meal?
Yeah. So, I mean, we don't want to get so rote that it's non-meaningful. So I think that's a starter. I think the other one for me is iron sharpens iron. If you want to create a habit in your family or your tribe, or you're around other people, do it. There's peer pressure goes both ways. And I think stopping to pray creates a peer pressure for everybody else to say, hey, this is what the cool kids do. It's okay to stop and do it. And especially for my kids. They see dad doing it, and it's like, okay, this is what we do. Let's get on board with it. So even if I don't feel comfortable doing it all the time, I do it anyway because of the people around me. Mm-hmm. I think those are probably two of the big things. And then I think the third one is, if you miss a prayer, stop to give thanks. So if you are working on something and it works out and you're like, man, look at what I did. No, okay, stop and check yourself. You didn't do that. God did that. So even if you missed the prayer initially, catch it on the rebound. God, thank you for helping me do that. Thank you for letting the patches on the spray tank work. Thank you for letting us get through a day without running into a fence. Thank you for whatever it is. So never miss the opportunity to catch up, because what you pray for help for on the other side becomes what you pray a prayer of thanksgiving for.
Mm-hmm. I think that's great. Sometimes we're so famous at wearing signs on our shirts.
Yeah.
Sometimes we got to reach down and read them. It might be helpful. I'm kind of like the Jewish guy. I put a phylactery on, and I prefer that.
Yeah.
I've got this ring that, to me, is symbolic of a Christian family. Mm-hmm. And I often think of the ring. I'll even touch the ring, and we'll move it around or something, but it's always like, okay, I know why that ring is there. Mm-hmm. And it's a reminder to me. It's always remember that and appreciate it and pray for that.
I think the thing that plagues modern Christianity the absolute most is the me movement. And the me movement is Satanism at its core. Satan doesn't come to you as, look at how he tempted Christ in the desert. It was all about Christ at the end of the day. Ultimately, it was about Satan, but it was clothed as being about Christ. If you cast yourself off the tower, you're so important, he'll catch you. You're so hungry, you've been out here for so many days. Turn the stone into bread and eat it because you know you can. It was all about him, and he just said, you know what, it isn't about me, it's about the Father. Yeah. So stop tempting me because it's about the Father. And as long as you're focused on the me movement, and honestly, this is going to sound heretical coming from a former counselor, as long as you're focused on your problems, you're going to be lost. You can't focus on your problems. You got to focus outward. You got to focus on what, you're miserable, so what? Nobody cares. People depend on you. Focus out. You don't like where your life is at? Okay, start taking steps towards it. But maybe your life is a sacrifice that makes other people's life better. Stop focusing on you and what you need and what you are and what you don't have, and start focusing on Christ. What does Christ need? What does Christ want? What does Christ want me to do?
Right, right. Because you've already come to the places you don't have the answer. Why keep focusing on it again, again, again?
Yeah. Well, and you look at it, it's kind of my theme right now is, if you consider Christ our boss, then our boss died on the cross. So suffering in some manner, some forms of suffering is the highest level that you can attain in life. No greater love has a man than he laid down his life for his friends. So your suffering for the kingdom is the highest peak you can possibly attain to, being worthy of suffering and being able to endure it because of the love, the joy, the peace, the things he puts in you. Nothing is higher than that.
Yeah, you just have to tell your kids that because they suffer, it wasn't for the kingdom necessarily.
Yeah, right. You don't know. Let's not self-induce our suffering here. My Catholicism only goes so far.
Right. Well, as always, Bear, I think the depth of what you talk about and the fact that you mix it with the reality of everyday life is just transforming. If anybody would just listen and act.
Yep. Thanks, Paul. And I think the more we let go of ourselves, even though it's scary and it's difficult to think of ourselves as nothing in that very esoteric sense of nothing, the more Christ can fill us up. Yes. If we empty the house and sweep it clean, we can fill it up with Christ if we will.
It's like I read, and I thought was kind of cute. You're a unique person, and so is everybody else.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's self-contained. Thank you, sir.
Thanks, Paul.
Hey y'all, thanks for joining us for Around the Supper Table. At Sanctuary Family Farms, we want to be real. Whether that's through our blogs, daily verses, or even Nana's recipes, we want to share the messages that God has laid on each of our hearts. If you liked what you heard today or want to get in touch with us, you can find us on Facebook and YouTube at Sanctuary Family Farms or our website at www.sanctuaryfamilyfarms.com, where we share our recipes and blogs and sell farm fresh beef and pork. We can't wait for you to join us again for next week's episode.